welcome to today's episode of Business Success Chronicles. I'm Corey Doggs of actionCOACH, and I'm excited to have Jason Sellnow, the founder of StraightForward Financial Insights, with me today. StraightForward Financial Insights is a fractional CFO firm that helps business owners turn financial complexity into clarity and clarity into confident growth. In addition to his CFO advisory work, Jason also serves as the CEO of Ripple Behavior Solutions, a mission-driven organization in the behavioral health space. And in that role, he focuses on aligning leadership, culture, and financial structure to support long-term client stability and organizational impact. His work at Ripple reinforces his belief that strong financial systems must support people, not just performance. He has professional designations, including CMA, CSCA, and CEPA. And across both organizations, Jason partners with owners and leadership teams to strengthen cash flow, align financial strategy with the owner's vision, and build businesses that are easier to run and more valuable over time. He is particularly experienced in guiding companies through scaling, operational turnaround, and exit prep by translating complex financial data into clear, actionable insight leaders can trust. He currently lives in Hartford, Wisconsin, but he's been well-traveled, and we'll get more into that shortly. Something unique about Jason that he's shared with me already prior to our podcast today is his career path took him from Wisconsin to California and back again. So he's built experience across industries and company stages, and ultimately came back home to be closer to his grandchildren. How many grandchildren do you have, Jason?
3. Yep.
3. All right.
Yep. Granddaughter, grandson from my oldest, and then my youngest son has a let's see, Sonny is she's about 1.5 years.
Awesome. So yeah, family's awesome and everything. So the journey that he's been on has shaped how he approaches business. Practical, grounded, and focused on building something sustainable, not just impressive on paper. What Jason likes to do in his downtime is spending time with his family. No surprise there, especially his grandkids, enjoying life back in Wisconsin, and he's continuing to learn Spanish. When did you start that journey?
Well, I started that journey a little bit by accident, right, when I moved to Southern California. So you're around a few people that are, speaking Spanish, but they're here, and then they'll speak English. So when it really sunk in, I took a trip to Punta Cana. This was probably 15 years ago, and I knew enough to be dangerous, to kind of figure out colors and what fruit I might be interested in, having right at breakfast. And the waiter was like, I think I know, and he spoke as much English as I spoke Spanish at that time. But the quick takeaway was that I was in someone else's country making, a big effort, at least for me, and he caught on to that. It really kind of created a bond, and was treated much better as a result of that action. So over the years, I've tried to learn more and more, and I study with a tutor todos los miércoles, so every Wednesday. So when I'm done here, I have a Spanish lesson tonight.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So would you consider yourself a lifelong learner of just growing and learning?
Yes. Okay. Yep, absolutely. I think that's important.
So some of that about Jason's kept him grounded and balanced. It reinforces his belief that a well-run business should support the owner's life, not dominate it. And I like to say that too. We all hear that work-life balance is no such thing. It's just balance.
Yeah. Some people, they get a lot of satisfaction out of their work. Okay. And so I think that's important, that we have, goals and things that we want to achieve. And so work can be a big part of that. But, if we're working and trying to do everything ourselves, maybe we have more of a W-2 that we've created for ourselves rather than a real business. And so ultimately we're human beings with heartbeats and, cardiovascular systems, and, time to take off for ourselves or loved ones that we're close to, or simply taking a vacation. If you have to take your laptop with you, certainly if you like that, okay, that's one thing. But if you're doing it because you have to,
Right.
we need to have that balance. Certainly checking in is fine, but when you have to, then we're on different ends of the spectrum.
And that's why it's so important to really have a good foundational knowledge of numbers. You don't need to know them inside and out, but someone like you can certainly help them get a handle on things at a high enough level so they can make better decisions and
Correct.
hopefully achieve more balance, right?
Yeah. I'm a little bit biased to that. I mean, will
Mhm.
always be a recovering accountant. But having a good grasp of what the numbers are, I think clears the fog a bit for people so that we can make sound decisions. I don't think that's going to hit the ball out of the park on every play, but it ups the batting average each and
Yeah.
every and being consistent, right? And that pays off over several seasons. I guess we're at the end of one NCAA football season and going into the NFL final teams and so on. But consistency, I think, is a big thing. And so
Yeah.
having those numbers and knowing where we're at is a good foundation because Ripple is a very mission-oriented organization. A lot of people that are vulnerable and need great care, and we talk a lot about that. However, you have to have the numbers and the dollars to be able to support that mission. So there's a balance there, right? Of finances to corporate culture and leadership and all the other things that go
Yeah.
with the topic that we're
Even the nonprofit space, right? Nonprofits are the lifeblood of a lot of local communities and
Mhm,
counties, et cetera, as a small business. But even nonprofits need to make a profit, or at least to stay, right? It still comes down to bringing the money in and
You
managing
done.
it.
You're darn right. Yeah. Whether you're a profit or not for profit, we're not the government, and by that specifically the federal
Yeah.
government. I say this from time to time. We don't have the ability to order some money to be printed for ourselves, right?
Right.
So we have
Mhm.
a budget that we have to hit, like it or not, nonprofit or profit.
Okay. And could you tell us a little bit more about Ripple?
Yes. So Ripple is a company that was started, oh gosh, at least probably 15 years ago by a couple of social workers, Jeff and Ann, and very, very good at what they do. So the people that are cared for are often very high on the autism spectrum, but not always. So very high behaviors, and often with some medical complications. So it's a real kind of an acute clientele that are cared for there. And Ripple is a company that when all other avenues have been exhausted, you come to Ripple. So very, very tough clients to care for. But what the organization does is gets people out of an institutional type setting very, very often into the community. Now that, can take some time because when you're, transitioning to and probably not verbal quite often, to a new place with new people. That's often a very, difficult time for our staff to deal with those types of behaviors. But we get those people into the community and part of the community.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. We have great people, and but yeah, I could go all day about that.
So, any idea how many lives you've impacted? Any ballpark on that?
Oh boy. Um,
There's the
maybe
patients or clients, right? Then there's the families and the community. It's just like a butterfly effect almost, I'm assuming,
it
right?
it is, yeah. So the owner, he's a big fan of the Grateful Dead. So Ripple is actually a song or a lyric from the Grateful Dead,
Oh,
but
cool.
the metaphor still holds.
Yeah.
And you hit the nail right on the head. It's about not only just that client, but their family, the community. And then we also talk about, the ripple effect within the people that work at Ripple
Oh,
as
yeah.
well. You're
Hmm.
making a big difference. And, we have to be competitive with what our rates are in the marketplace for labor and so on. But also then there's a budget constraint as well. So we really talk about that a lot to try and show people that the gratitude that we have, not only for working for us, but what they do for the client.
Well, thanks for sharing. Now, one last thing before I dive into some questions is, I always like to ask, what's something you're most proud of? And Jason shared that, obviously his grandkids, but leading a financial and operational turnaround for a business that was near bankruptcy. And he helped reposition it into a stable, well-run company that reached a 2025 valuation of approximately 5 million. So you took them from, oh boy, the nuclear option to turned around, and now it's going great. So throughout that process, he said the owners regained confidence and options, and it's the most rewarding part of your work.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's not easy. There's a lot of work to be done when that kind of a scenario presents itself. But yeah, it makes a difference, not for the people solely that own that organization, but the employees that have been at that organization for a number of years and have devoted themselves. And then there's also, the other ancillary stakeholders like, vendors and customers and just the presence in the community
The ripple
so
effect.
yeah, again, yeah. Yeah, this is going to be a theme, right? Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Okay, first question as we dive in here is tell us a little bit more about your personal story, your journey. Where were you born and raised, and kind of tell us about your journey and what got you to Hartford today.
Yeah. So born in Greene County, which is over by Monroe, and spent the first 30 years of my life there. And my youngest son had this interest in, entertaining and acting. And to make a long story short on that one, I was married at the time, and we encouraged that at a healthy level and kind of just organically kind of let that grow, and then it did. And then next thing he had a manager, and okay, well, I think you should take a trip to Southern California because that's where the action is at.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that. And then he had an agent, and then the agent, and this was probably October, September of 2000. And so we think we can get him some work. All right.
How old was your son at the time?
Fourth grade, maybe.
Oh, so young. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But my ex-wife, we went on some amazing adventures, and I probably would not have done that if not for her. Along with, we took a trip to Africa at one time. Probably would not have done that either. But so okay, we'll give this adventure a shot. And next thing you know, he booked a handful of commercials in that first quarter, and it's like, all right. So I quickly learned what Hotel California means. You just, there's a lyric or whatever, you never leave. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. So next thing you know, it was 17 years out there. And it was October of 2016. On my birthday, my oldest son had moved back, I don't know, 3-4 years prior to that. And he got married that July. We're expecting a baby. So it was like, all right, this California adventure, I can see the exodus there.
Yeah.
And so moved back here to the Milwaukee area because my daughter-in-law is from South Milwaukee, and that's where they live, over in the Oak Creek area.
Mhm.
And that's where StraightForward started. It was just going to be a kind of a part-time thing to bridge the gap until I had done what I always did, which is work the proverbial 40-hour week for somebody. And that kind of, I don't say it took off, but it took off enough to just end up going in that path. And so
What year was that when you started StraightForward?
that was July of 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
And part of that, you were doing accounting work out in the West Coast?
Yes. Yeah. Grew my career out there, from, the lower levels, controller, CFO, and so on. And my last gig out there was for a nonprofit. So I did a fair amount of work in the nonprofit space when I came back here, because that's a pretty tight community. If you've done it before, you kind of get it, and it's such a short supply of people that can, really jump into that work. That really bridged some of that gap. But then I met Ripple, the owners there, and I'd been working with a colleague that was talking about the CEPA, the exit planning certification, and so I accomplished that in 2020, which it was kind of on the radar. And then with the whole COVID thing, okay, what's going on in that first handful of months? The Exit Planning Institute put it online. I think they decreased the fee, but you didn't have to pay for a hotel. You didn't have to, take time away. You just had to carve out, 5-6 hours or whatever, and completed that. And so having a conversation with, you talk about what's going on with your life, with your loved ones, but also at work. And so the owners at Ripple were interested in that. They're like, oh gosh, I could see where we need to really get on to this runway, 3, 5, 7 years kind of a thing. And that's a great thing, because exit planning, that there really needs to be a better term for it, because people, kind of lends itself to, well, I'm there and I want to exit, so let's get her done. Let's call up your broker, the M&A, and make it happen. It's best if there's a runway for that. So with the mission, we talked a little bit about the people that are cared for. That really stuck with me. My oldest, he no longer works with autistic adults, but he had for a number of years. So it was, I don't know, I want to say serendipitous, but it was like some pieces were kind of coming together. It gave me an opportunity to take a bigger role with them as they, started to step back and, transition into developing their leadership team. Things that I alluded to earlier, being a recovering accountant, I really got into studying, sociology and social psychology 2014, 2015, could be in that lifelong learner, Corey, that we talked about. And so I could really put those to use in more of a, in a leadership role where that type of thing is needed, right? You got your executive team and your senior team and your junior team, and we need to start that conveyor belt so that the business is a business, and it's a repeatable process. And so I've stepped away, from StraightForward, in the sense that Alan Zephyr is a senior member of the team, and he takes over a lot of that. We're a small firm. There's a few people that work there, but I had to do a little bit of kind of exit planning myself to, that it wasn't just me incorporated. It was in July of 2017, right? But it just made sense on a lot of levels, because at some point, and we still have a runway at Ripple of a few years. Gosh, next thing you know, you're 55, and I'm wearing reading glasses. I don't really care what I look like anymore, because I'm more interested in being able to read the work that I'm doing. But the whole point is, someday I'll be 62, 65. That's 6, 7 years down the road. But you realize when you get this age, it goes pretty darn fast, right?
It goes fast, yeah. It sure does.
I do want to continue to do this work when I'm in my 60s. We'll see about 70s, but it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing it. And so having someone like Alan to, keep the, that locomotive, trucking along is really beneficial. So it's been a fun ride. It's amazing how fast time goes, but yeah, that's kind of the long story. Sorry.
No, that's
my
great.
adventures.
I mean, we'll think back to, you had a 4th grade son you helped him pursue his dream, and now fast forward, you got grandkids, and it just goes fast, right? Let's just enjoy the ride.
Yep, enjoy the ride. Yeah, it's not about climbing the getting to the top of the mountain. I think it's about the climb.
Okay, next question. Leadership. Pretty big buzzword, but also really powerful and impactful. You've referenced that already. There's different types of leaders out there. call it what you will. Some are better or worse than others, or are they? Everyone has their own style. But what would you consider
Yeah.
your leadership style to be?
Well, I know what it's not, and it's not a micromanager.
Hmm.
Um, I like to lead by authenticity, being curious. Um, I was never one when I was growing up to be, hey, I wanted to participate in the public speaking stuff. And, probably not somebody that's going to sit in front of, a Fortune 500 or NASDAQ, whatever company. And I'm okay with that. But, people talk about, some of the leaders ask them to present at the quarterly meeting. And, I want to present in an emotionally intelligent way to hear them out and not say, "Oh, you'll be fine," right? But share what my experiences were, that I know I'm can be a little quirky or whatever sometimes, or have my own little idiosyncrasies, but I'm okay with that because trying to be somebody that I'm not is kind of a recipe for failure.
Right. And you mentioned it too, emotional intelligence, right? Being able just to, empathy might be the word too. Empathy, not sympathy, empathy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Really understanding where someone's coming from, I think, and hearing them is a huge part of that process. If I don't understand where somebody's coming from, I might talk right past them. Now that takes a little bit of time out of your day to do that, and some days you have more time than others. So it's always a continual, challenge to have the patience to be able to do that. But I think it's the right process because it's a time saver in the long run.
I learned this, someone told me this years ago in my corporate journey before I became a coach 12 years ago, is good leaders make people like them and great leaders make people like themselves, which I always like that one.
Yeah, that is a good one. I really like that. I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of looking inward of what I could do better. It's not a fun process.
It's never fun to challenge yourself like that, right? Look inward, but
Right.
it's
It pays
powerful.
off. It pays off. Yeah. Yeah.
It's also a skill kind of to learn how to do that, right?
It, yeah, it is. I subscribe to the Harvard Business Review,
Mhm.
and I'll read at least half of that when it comes out. I've got the executive, subscription online, and I think that's one of the things that's some of the best time spent um, is learning through others as to what are best practices. So I can't really recommend that more.
Yeah, well, our founder Brad Sugars was one of his influencers was Jim Rohn. He always talks about the quote is "work harder on yourself than you do on your business," which is yeah,
Good
good thing.
advice.
Mhm.
Good
Okay,
advice.
so you shared some about straightforward. Tell me more about like who's your ideal client, who's your target market for your fractional CFO services.
For fractional CFO services, good question. Um, I use a general rule of thumb. It's like 5 million in annual revenues, plus or minus 5 million.
Okay.
Again, it's a rule of thumb.
Yeah.
If you're, we still have, Alan had a gig here not too long ago. It was an interim role. And, the company was a manufacturer that was doing somewhere around 50 million in annual revenues, but that was an interim role. And in our space there, that's there's pluses and minuses. It's nice when your capacity is used up for 3 days, but then you know that it's going to come to an end after a certain period of
Yeah.
time. So there's a you have to be cognizant and aware of what that turnover looks like on your calendar. Like a lot of things, the more people you have on your team, the more economies of scale you get out of, you know, um, how that client base is distributed to keep everybody happy and making the kind of living that they need to make. But in that 1 million to $10 million range, it really makes a lot of sense for business owners. Let's say whatever you're doing, you're putting, I don't know, a quarter million to the bottom line.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. You need some sort of C-suite help hiring that. First of all, are they going to be busy for the entire week? What does that look like? What's the kind of quality of somebody that's, maybe they're not going to be busy, for the entire 40 hours or whatever. It's obviously going to be more than 40 hours when you're working that hard as an entrepreneur. But okay, I'm going to spend half of that on, that C-suite. That's a pretty big chunk out of
Mhm.
that bottom line. So whether it's in the fractional CFO space or a fractional other C-suite executive, you can get very qualified help at a fraction of the cost, right? So um, not everyone is, just going to jump on the internet and seek out fractional help, but the referrals that we've gotten often come from, banks or people in the wealth space, lawyers or people like yourself. Somebody has a need that could be their QuickBooks are a mess, which is maybe something more for like a senior accountant to really kind of take the bull by the horns. Um, but what I'm tired of not knowing whether I'm going to make payroll in 2 weeks, and I just
Mhm.
barely made this one, and what is a 13-week cash flow forecast, and to really take the bull by the horns of, the information that one needs to scale their business, or at least, just get a good grasp right where I'm at before I scale it. Um, because they've just kind of grown weary of, well, gosh, I went from 3 million to 6 million, but I'm not making any more money.
Mhm.
That can be taxing. Why am I doing that? So we can answer those types of and solve those types of issues.
So you talked about you started straightforward kind of as a short-term solution to figure out what was next, and here we are. So when did you realize you had the confidence to make straightforward go and realize it was like, yeah, this is legit. It's not a bridge anymore. How long into
What?
it?
How long? Oh, how long into it? Oh, it was several years.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it just kind of coasted, right? And
mhm.
um, excuse me. And then it was like, okay, you've been around long enough. People, I think, have confidence that you're not just flash in a pan or whatever. Certainly, I think there's people are getting into it to really have that long-term plan, but it takes a while to build your referral network and your
Mhm.
you know your customer base to really be able to support it, because life happens, and kids want to, it seems like they cost more every year,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Everything costs more, especially kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but yeah, it was about the time of transitioning over into that larger role with Ripple, and realizing that I'd followed through and accomplished things in the first handful of years, and that built trust in the community, and business owners likely talking with other business owners that they network with wherever that may be, and that this was something that I should continue to pay attention to or cultivate um, for my future self.
So if you go back to the beginning of your career, where did you go to college, by the way? Where did you get your degree from?
Okay, so there was a small business college in Madison,
Hmm.
which is no longer there, but it was
Hmm.
Madison Junior College of Business. Got a 2-year accounting degree, and always had this. Oh, I'll do it next year, right? I'll get
Hmm.
the bachelor's degree next year. Well, moving to California was like, huh, this is like one of those pivotal moments in your life. I'm going to get this done. So there was in LA, traffic is
Oh,
a
yeah.
big choke point, right? So there was a university that was in the Inland Empire that had a little satellite um, location in Burbank. All right. And I did. I finished that. It probably took maybe 3.5 years to finish the
Hmm.
last two. But as a working adult, doing that at nights, that wasn't easy, and got her done. So that was the University of Laverne. And then shortly after finishing my bachelor's degree in 2004, I had the opportunity to work on a master's degree. And Pepperdine had satellite locations as well. And so I hunkered down, and again, night school is it's a lot of work, especially when you're working on your master's degree.
You have a
So
family.
yeah, yeah. Well, let me tell you, because you're going to have classes 2 nights a week. You're going to be studying those other 2 nights. You're going to have one night, Friday night to do something with your spouse, your family, your kids, or whatever. Saturday, it was like, okay, you're going to have to meet with your teammates and work on projects. Sunday was like, okay, church day, nap day,
Hmm.
right? Just kind of
Yeah.
get caught up. And then Monday it starts all over again. So that 2 years went by really, really fast. But so glad that I did it.
So that leads me to this question. If you, what would you do differently going back to when you started your career?
Mhm.
Anything?
Well, I think I would even go back a little bit prior to that, and I would have focused on, as a young man in high school, in a small town, sports, and if you're halfway decent, you can play a couple sports. But
Hmm.
I would not have stretched myself so thin
Hmm.
on that. I would have probably just stuck with football and gotten much, much better grades.
Okay.
And I think that would have set the stage. But certainly I would have, I think, I still like going the private route in accounting. I don't think I would have gone over into like the CPA firm and tax end of things. I still respect my accounting cousins, but I like the private side of things. But I may have spent a year or two at least understanding that better, or working for a larger firm earlier in my career.
So you've got straightforward. You're also the CEO at Ripple. What's a common myth that maybe you have heard or out there about being a president and owner, a CEO that you want to
Mhm.
dispel right now to our listeners?
Well, that they're born leaders.
Huh? Okay.
Certainly, I think some people probably are, but the
Mhm.
vast majority of people, um, I talked about it a little bit earlier. Okay, you don't have to be polished at public speaking. You just have to work on it. Um, like with being a learner, right? With Spanish. Okay. Michelle will is expresses she's not as comfortable like when we go to Mexico or wherever, just trying to strike up a conversation, because it's hard to, it's different when you're practicing them, when you're talking with somebody that's their first language. But just being willing to immerse yourself, make mistakes. I think that analogy holds true in business. I think you have to have, a good solid foundation in whatever your discipline is, right? And mine happens to be finance and accounting, and just really paying close attention to the moving parts of the dollars, and that we're not overextending ourselves. Um, you know, at any point, I guess I had a mentor back in the '90s. Um, Cash is king, Jason. Don't ever forget it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, because if you do run out of cash, you're in big trouble, because the banks are not going to
Yeah.
like that at all. So, again, having a good solid discipline and showing that you know your craft and your trade and your skill sets. But leading, I think, is something that if you apply yourself and you do your homework, and you're continually trying to learn and improve and be better, people will follow you.
All right. Thanks. As next question is that looking back in the recent past, is there anything that you've learned recently or any advice that was provided recently that just landed with you that hit you?
Um, yes. Yeah. And
Oh,
follow me on this one.
okay.
So I was just reading, I forget the name of the book, but I was reading the other night. It was about Stanley Milgram. He's the one that did Obedience to Authority, right? If we remember that from our psychology classes. But he also did a lesser known study on 6 degrees of separation.
Hmm.
Okay. And so this has to do with like the concentration or the density of our networks, whether it's our social network or a business network or whatever, network we surround ourselves with. But so he studied people in Kansas and Nebraska, and this was probably back in the '60s. Here's this person, the stockbroker in New York, I think it was, and I want you to send a letter to whoever you know on a first name basis that you think, will get there. And so the ones that did get there, on, I think, the mean or the medium, whatever, was five people. Okay.
Hmm.
That was a third. The other 2/3, for the most part, never made it out of, Kansas and Nebraska. Right. So it was just kind of this little, almost like an echo chamber. Right. And so I think stretching and finding people that may have differences of opinions on things is it's valuable to seek that out. It's valuable to also stretch, upward and outward, and you know, being comfortable has a cost, I guess, is what we're all
Absolutely.
going
You
to say.
cannot grow in a comfort zone, right? It's not possible.
Right. Right. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for sharing. So I asked you, any new hobbies? You said Spanish, but I want to ask, is there anything else out there you want to learn after you've mastered Spanish? What's next?
It's probably going to take me a while. Um, I do like, I don't think I'm going to master it, but when I lived in Los Angeles, it's a 5-hour drive to Las Vegas, and I wasn't a big poker aficionado or anything like that, but I think it's a fun game to play when you keep it at a low level, and I liked going to South Point. I haven't been there probably for, I don't know, probably 5 years or more, but that and just traveling, I think, going to new places and seeing what the cultures are there, and experiencing food and language and art and those types of things is something
Are
that
you
really
more of
interests
a go back to someplace you love, or been there, done that, let's try someplace new?
me. Probably a little bit more of go someplace you love.
Okay.
Yeah, there's Gulf Shores and then Cancun, but it is worthwhile to stretch there as well, I think. Um, so
So let's talk straightforward for a second again. What's the next big thing for straightforward? Where do you see things going in the next 1 to 3 years with that?
with the next 1 to 3 years, I think we've fine-tuned the some of the sales and marketing efforts to that. In 2025, we set more of a kind of just a foundational, having followers on LinkedIn, and coming really close to meeting that goal, but that doesn't put business on the
Right.
books. But we did bring on a new person to handle some capacity in the fourth quarter last year, and I just had a meeting with Alan a couple nights ago about what our pipeline looks here coming up in the first quarter, and things look good. So I think that bringing on a senior accountant to handle more of those bookkeeping type duties is something that's going to be beneficial for us. This is tax season right now, so calling your CPA firm to help out with tax with accounting stuff during tax season. There's always choke points that they have because this gets really busy for them. But that's something that we noticed last year was a fairly decent demand that we just didn't. We were focusing on other things, and those were our goals and rocks for 2025, and we kind of stuck to that.
Well, like you said earlier, someone's in that $5 to $10 million in revenue and dropping 250 to the bottom line. Boy, do I got to take half of that and pay a CFO, or is there another option? Kind of the same thing for you. If do you hire someone full time, or can it be part time? It's just that balance is always tricky. It's part of being an entrepreneur, figuring that out, and that's
That
where
that's
numbers come in.
that's exactly right. Yeah, and going back to the leadership thing, finding people that can solve puzzles is something that really interests me, because business, I think, is an infinite game, and just when you think you've kind of mastered all things that are, going to come down the road. Life hits you with something brand new that you didn't plan for, didn't think was coming. And it takes resiliency and a skill set to just be able to say, all right, how are we going to tackle this thing?
Okay, last question before we start wrapping up. What advice do you have for business owners who are trying to do it all on their own?
All on their own. Well, I think that goes back to what we talked about a moment ago with that density. When you're the conduit for all things in your business, there's a lot of risk there. In the Midwest, our business has, after COVID, is no longer restricted to, an hour radius from where your home is, right? So we, we can talk to people all over the country, but yeah, what was I just saying a second ago? Turned to my dad and got on a quick tangent there. For business owners trying to do it all on their own. Yeah. So here in the Midwest, right? I think, and throughout the country, really, but here in the Midwest, I think there's a really solid work ethic, which comes from days like we're going into, and we just had. Somebody's got to go out and fix things when it's frozen solid and it's 10 below
milk
zero.
The cows every day.
Milk the cows. Yeah.
You're from Monroe.
They need 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. like it or not. It's got to happen, right? And so, those kind of things I think are instilled into the DNA, and it's certainly valuable to have that. But if you're the one that's doing it all, then again, we're human. We got to be able to, I think, hand some of those things off. And we've kind of touched on some of that already in our conversation. But the other thing is that growth is never, linear, always up. Money you spend in good times is the money that you spend in bad times. And so what that means is, all right, hey, we doubled our revenues, right? Life is good. Let's get a boat. Let's get a bigger house. Let's do this. It's to make life a little bit more difficult for, people that are in our industry is, you got to share some of that not so pleasant, but that's what they're paying you for, right? What does it look like to add this to our to our overhead? Because if sales turn, for whatever regional, industry, macro, global economics changes things, or political, right? Somebody passes a law about this or that, can just change overnight on you. What does it look like going into, the next year, next 5 years? Once you add something to your overhead, it's hard to, makes it a little bit harder to steer, right? And we don't want to be the Titanic. We want to have a little bit of agility.
Okay. All right. Just to wrap up then, I'm sure you've had lots of influencers and mentors along your journey. So now is the chance you get to give some shout outs to people that have influenced you along the way.
Mm-hmm. I think Dr. G from Dr. Gert Minion, grad school economics professor. He was pretty intimidating, but it was a good experience. And then Dale Lundgren was, I worked for him back in the mid 2000s. Dale has since passed, but great guy to work for, really helped me out in growing my career. And I need to pay it forward as a result of that, and I plan on doing so. So, and if I was to go way back, I think probably Coach Updike from Evansville football. Great experience there, and a good leadership story was, one of our games he called timeout, and it was, you didn't want to lose to Broadhead. And I wasn't one of those. How was that?
Was that your big rival, Evansville and Broadhead?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I was an underclassman. I didn't really play much till I was a senior, and gosh, I was scared of Coach Grosstein. I mean, that was one of those games that was like you could cut it with a knife. It was so tense in there. But yeah, I think it was late in the fourth quarter, and I was just somebody that really wanted to play my part and just be there for my teammates. And it was unlike me, but he's called timeout and comes over into the huddle, and I go, Coach, they've been leaving the middle open like all game. And he looks at Mark Z, who was the quarterback. Well, then throw it to him. And like, that was the timeout. And then I'm like, I never really thought about it. Like, oh boy, what did I get myself into? I
Yeah.
just did it, and I think he trusted his players to, to do things. And as an organization, I think that's true in, business as well. Unless you're going to do everything yourself, but then it's done when you shut the doors, right? Unless you've taught your children how to milk the cows at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. and everything else that goes along with it. Once you go, then, the operation shuts down. So I
Even your
think it's,
football story, right? If you break that down, you had to have the courage to speak up. He had to be able, be willing to listen and then make a quick decision and keep it simple.
that's a good insight, Corey. Yeah, because there are places I have worked in my past where the culture was such that you were kind of afraid to speak up. You didn't want to do anything wrong, right? And there's you don't want the fear of failure to be that strong.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks. That's all the time we have for today. So, Jason, it was great having you on and getting to know you more. And we'll thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Corey. I really appreciate it. This has been great.
Okay.